This is WFYI News Now. It's November 14th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, why scientists spent over a decade cataloging species of plants and animals in Indiana backcountry. State education leaders say the Indiana Summer Learning Labs program could expand. And why some people in the community have turned to their religious leaders since Election Day.
I tell people, go back to be neighbors, go back to be family, go back to be friends. We cannot just keep this tension and polarization going.
Those stories coming up. But first, the founder of a defunct Indiana online charter school and his wife were in court Tuesday. From WFYI's education desk, Dylan Pierce-McCoy reports that the state alleges they improperly mortgaged and sold a $2.5 million Florida condo.
Thomas and Rhonda Stoughton are being sued by the state in a bid to recoup over $150 million paid to Indiana Virtual School and Indiana Virtual Pathways Academy. The Stoughtons agreed to limit their spending during the lawsuit and not to sell or take out loans on real estate they own. The aim was to preserve money for the Stoughtons to pay if the state wins the case. But Indiana alleges the couple took out a new, larger mortgage on a Florida condo. They didn't make the payments, and eventually the condo was foreclosed on. The state agreed to delay a contempt hearing set for Tuesday. The Stoughtons must deposit about $237,000 from the sale of the Florida property with the court. I'm Dylan Pierce-McCoy.
Scientists spent over a decade cataloging species of plants and animals in the Morgan-Monroe State Forest and the Yellowwood State Forest backcountry area. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Rebecca Thiel reports now the Indiana Forest Alliance has produced a book following those scientists' journey called Eco-Blitz.
Retired Indiana University biology professor Paul Rothrock was one of those scientists responsible for doing an inventory of plant species. He says, as one example, they found about 37 fungi that weren't named in a DNA database.
By way of saying we have many things that are just even unknown, even to this day, and even over areas such as Indiana, which is a very well-known part of the temperate zone.
The Indiana Forest Alliance would like to see the two state forest areas designated as a type of high conservation value forest, which would allow for more old-growth trees. The Indiana Department of Natural Resources reviewed the IFA's petition and said there's already less tree cutting and other active management in backcountry areas, and that state properties nearby have similar species. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Rebecca Thiel.
Indy Summer Learning Labs were launched in Marion County in 2021 as a community-based effort to address pandemic learning loss. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Kirsten Adair reports state education leaders say the program could expand to other areas of the state with additional funding.
Learning labs take place in schools and organizations within the community during June and July. Officials say they're different from other summer programs because they combine school-based learning and high-quality education from community partners. They also focus on accelerating learning instead of remediation. Brandon Brown is the CEO of the Mind Trust, the charter school advocacy group that oversees the program. He says students who participate have seen great results.
Students within Summer Learning Labs made significantly more academic progress in both math and reading when you compare them to their peers, and they actually had rates of learning that far exceeded where they were before COVID.
Learning labs were expanded into other areas of the state this summer. State officials say lawmakers could increase funding this year to enact them statewide. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Kirsten Adair.
And for our final story today, the election brought mixed emotions from Americans: happy, sad, confused. Some have turned to their religious leaders to help find comfort. WFYI's Samantha Horton reports from one Indianapolis mosque.
People come and go from Masjid al-Fajr, a mosque on the west side of Indianapolis, Friday afternoon. Sitting in his office, Imam Ahmed Al-Amin says he saw a split in Muslim voters supporting Democrats, Republicans, and third-party candidates in this year's election. Al-Amin sees his role as a religious leader to be unbiased in politics, but says he does counsel individuals to look to the future.
I tell people, go back to be neighbors, go back to be family, go back to be friends. We cannot just keep this tension and polarization going. And fortunately, a lot of community members are listening.
Al-Amin says over the next few months, the Friday service sermon will focus on bringing unity back into the community. I'm Samantha Horton.
That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.